Eoghan Murphy is next.
Thank you, Chair. And I too would like to congratulate the Minister on bringing forward this bill. It's about time that we did something on lobbying in this country to try and regulate it, to try and bring greater transparency to it. I mean, lobbying is a part of political life. It's not inherently a bad thing. It's actually an important function of democracy to make sure that one's voice and people's voices are heard. But when it's not done openly, it actually undermines our democracy. And, when something like lobbying is not done openly, it undermines our democracy. I think the exact same sentiment can be expressed for appointments to state boards. Recent events have not cast politics or my own party in a good light, and I am ashamed that my party did not move more quickly to fully reform the area of board appointments as we promised. Old habits do die hard, but now at least it would seem that this old habit has suddenly died very quickly, and rightly so. But it shouldn't have had to happen this way, and we should have had the courage of our own convictions. And that perhaps is the greater failing in recent events. But the important fact to take from all of this is that in our commitment to have all board appointments now made through the public appointment system, a cultural problem inherent in the practice of politics in this country since the foundation of the state has been eradicated overnight. I do not welcome the events that brought us to this place, to this point, but I think such change is very welcome. And I think the Minister has moved very swiftly to bring in this change. He has taken advantage, seen the opportunity in this crisis, and I congratulate him for that. In the area of lobbying, it is welcome, too, that we now move to bring some regulation and transparency to this area of our democracy. And I, too, have been lobbied on the bill and the details of the bill, and I've read the bill. And it's a very important first step, and we need to move to get it enacted as quickly as possible and to use it as a foundation from which we build and continue to try and bring greater transparency and regulation to this area of political life. A couple of points I'd like to note for committee stage, Minister, and hopefully we can debate them then and get further clarity. In the legislation, lobbyists are required to register. However, my understanding is that the civil servant or the advisor or the person being lobbied has no obligation to ask if the lobbyist is registered. I think that such an obligation should be put in place. I think there's got to be a balance here between the person lobbying and the person who is lobbied to make sure that things are being done in accordance with the new laws. As is my understanding, as also, the person can still be lobbied, even if they know the person who's lobbying them not to be on the register. I think that's a mistake. I think if that is the case, that also needs to be amended. On the categories of people included as the lobbied, under the bill it covers Secretaries General and Assistant Secretaries, along with their equivalents in local authorities. But I wonder if we're pitching this too high in terms of responsibilities. An Assistant Secretary has a huge amount of work coming across their desk. They can't always be on top of all of the detail. And so I wonder if we might include a level below, or maybe even 2 levels below, just for safeguarding. And if it was felt that they weren't relevant for lobbyists, and that's why they were excluded, then there should be no harm in including them, potentially.
It's the next phase.
Excellent. No, thank you, Minister. Another point I'd like to make is about, again, the point that my colleague Deputy Joe Costello made about companies less than 10. I often get lobbied by very small companies on the same issue. And what's been brought to my attention is the possibility of very large companies creating small subsidiaries just for this purpose if they think it's important enough. So if we can find some sort of language to capture that without putting an unnecessary burden on small businesses, a regulatory burden or a financial burden, I think that'll be welcome. As for the Code of Conduct, Minister, my understanding from the legislation is that the lobbyists must have regard to the code, but that's not actually binding on them, and there are no sanctions or penalties for not following the code. I do feel that if there are no consequences for breaching the code, then it won't be adhered to as we would like it to be, and I think we need to make sure that it cannot be ignored. And I think if that's for the next phase, then that's absolutely acceptable, that we move to find those kind of sanctions or that integrity there. I don't think the HSC is included, and I think it should be. And the final point I wanted to make was about so-called off-book meetings, which I don't think are covered in the legislation. A very skilled lobbyist will earn their money in this area, where they're able to arrange an accidental or coincidental meeting because they know the habits of a particular person, or because Irish society is so small, we know where people are going to be, or we can guess at it. And we need to do something to try and capture that as best we can. It may not be possible, but the best lobbyists will be able to arrange for these chance encounters. And so I think that there needs to be some sort of duty to inform provision, that if one feels that they were the subject of lobbying on an issue outside of the formal structures of, say, a meeting in a government department or somewhere else, that there be some sort of sense that if you feel that, and that you have an obligation to state that. as a way maybe to capture it. It's not perfect, but it might be something we could do to try and capture that area of lobbying that will continue to go on and will go on away from the public eye. But just to conclude, Chair, I do congratulate the Minister on taking this first step. And when I said it's about time, it wasn't a criticism of the delay it has taken. A huge amount has come through in the past 3 years. It's great that we've seen it come in this session of the government and at this important time. But I'd also like to welcome very much his moves in recent days to protect the integrity of the political system and to make sure that state work, on be it a board, a publicly appointed board, a board that receives public money, is not because of who you know, but what you know and your abilities. Thank you.